Well, New Year's greetings to all of you friends. We've just celebrated our newborn Lord. We're filled with new life, fresh hope, as we gather for our Institute session this first time in 2017. And it's the first of our classes in a next 3-year cycle of courses. We're anticipating 2 exciting events tonight, and the first will be the honoring of you who have participated in the Institute at least one class for every of the 12 courses in the past 3 years, and many of you have attended all of them or nearly all of them. And second, Michelle Murray's message to us on missions. And those are going to be 2 great occasions. So I ask that we join in prayer again a little more generally this time. Eternal God, we're filled with awe in your divine miracle of coming to us personally in the life of Jesus, whose birth we've so recently celebrated. May we be filled with his new life in our hearts and in our churches. We thank you for your supreme gift of Christ, and we give thanks for these faithful friends in our Institute family. Will you bless them? Will you guide Michelle Murray, who will teach us so that we may be more steadfast followers of our Lord? And it's in his name that we give thanks. Amen. Our class this evening completes the 4th offering of the 3-year Church Leadership Institute curriculum since I have been associated with the Institute. David and Drew Davenport, founders of the Institute, have given leadership since 2001. So we're grateful to you, Drew and David, and we're grateful to God who gave you the vision for this global ministry. We thank you and we honor you. This evening, we honor everyone who is faithfully participating in this valuable ministry. I do want to recognize you who have attended each of the 12 courses in the past 3 years, including several friends who would view the video recordings on YouTube. So listen to these names and be gratified by the number of people who have been involved with us. Benita Atkins, Sue Banbury, Matt Bishop, Dee Brower, Floyd Brown, Marjorie Brown, Galen Burnett, Micah Burnett, Sheila Campbell, Bruce Carpenter, David Davenport, Drew Davenport, Brian Dudley, Sheila Elledge, John Good, Gary Greer, Lori Heath, Josh Hine, Sally Hewitt, Diane Hudson, Travis Hockett, Carol Kingery, and let me just add, Carol Kingery has a perfect attendance for the 12 years that I've directed the Institute, 144 successive classes. Thank you, Carol. Eunice Kinzer, Merle Kinzer, Randy Littlefield, Jerry Louthan, Mary Louthan, Michelle Louthan, three of whom are our musicians, Dennis McDowell, Mike Neifert, Lauren Peters, John Pierce, Susan Pierce, Phyllis Roughton, Kathy Swan, Robert Swan, Joe Watkins, Lyle Whiteman, Peggy Whiteman. Tell me of anyone whom I have missed. I think everyone who's online tonight, your name was mentioned. Is there anyone online tonight whose name was not mentioned? I'm looking my list one more time. Isn't that an impressive list? You see, there are a lot of people that log on from different parts of our Quaker constituency and who they see us on YouTube rather than being able to be active with us. So that list includes those friends too. But I want to say again that I honor all of you. I thank you for your faithfulness. I commend everyone who's present this evening, all of our Institute friends, for your faithfulness to the Institute, to the leadership of the Friends Church, your faithfulness to our Lord. Thank you. Any comments about that list? As you listen, do you know of anyone I've missed? That's an impressive list. Now, I will send the certificates in the mail, so you can be looking for that. Certificates are, I think they're very attractive. They have your name on it individually, and you will either want to put it someplace. It's on the hard parchment cardstock. You may want to frame it. So now we welcome Michelle Murray. Are you still with us, Michelle?
I am, Dave.
Oh, good. Now, I didn't have to worry whether Michelle Murray would know how to log in, because she logged in for, let's see, 15, 30, 45, a minimum of 60 times in her master's program using WebEx. So I didn't even ask her any questions about WebEx. I just asked her where she would be. And she's in California. So let me just tell you some things I know about her. And first I want to say she is a Friends missionary. Now she's involved in mission work at Berkeley College and in Haviland, Kansas. She is also active in Haviland Friends Church. You may want to tell us where you just returned from doing continued, I think, missions work. At Berkeley, she teaches, she counsels students, particularly those who are interested in short-term missions. She organizes our juniors' global trips for students who want short-term mission experiences abroad, including Cambodia. Now in Haviland, she manages the Origins Divine Coffee House, and it's a place of ministry where Berkeley College students, town residents, visitors can share with one another their Christian faith, and where Berkeley students are given an opportunity to work in a Christian environment. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree from California State University. It was at that time, and I learned about that when she was applying for her master's degree. Now she has a Master of Arts in Transformational Leadership with a concentration in spiritual formation from Berkeley College. So you can join other colleagues with you here tonight, like Dennis McDowell, and tell us how much. Oh, but you're continuing in the education process, because I learned today that you're logging into a course being taught by our own Quaker. Well, you're going to take two courses with two Quakers, Ron Stansel in Evangelical Friends Missions and Paul Anderson in New Testament. Are you taking that New Testament class?
I am.
Oh, wow, good. She served Evangelical Friends Church Southwest as a missionary in Cambodia, and then under Marketplace Ministries in Cambodia, and she managed a Christian coffee house there, training young people to work in the coffee house. She is deeply concerned about a major problem of human trafficking, and it's major in Cambodia, but it's also major in the U.S. and all around the world, the problem of human trafficking. She went into the brothels boldly, brought out some who were held captive, trained them for respectable Christian work in her coffee house. That is a remarkable story, unlike any other that I've heard. She has a powerful message, amazing experiences to share with us. And sometime, when you get a little more time, you might ask her about her adventures in God's natural world and about her hike to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And when one of our master students today told me about that hike, she said, "Oh, that's the highest mountain anybody could ever climb." So, Michelle, we're extremely blessed to have you as our teacher tonight. We thank you for being with us, and we look forward to what you have to share with us. So why don't I mute my mic, and you can just take off. Oh, listen, are you going to use any PowerPoints or anything like that tonight?
No,
Okay.
I won't.
Okay, then if you want to, you can all go to full screen, and you can see her, and then you can see the little pictures of all of us below that. So I'll mute my mic.
Okay. You've already muted there, Dave. We can't hear you anymore.
I think I'll turn my video. You see, Michelle knows far more about this WebEx than I do. So, Michelle, if we get in trouble at some future meeting, I have your cell phone number. I'm calling you. I might turn my video off right now also, so that since I'm the last one that's talked, my picture doesn't stay up there when we go full screen. I'll be right here, though.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, hello. I first off want to apologize. I've been sick with a cough all week, so if I start coughing, I have a cup of tea and some water right by me, and we'll move forward from there. But Dave asked me to teach, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. It's been a while, and I've had quite a while to ponder what to talk about tonight. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me first, and then we'll jump into some missions ideas. I grew up in California. I'm a native Californian, which is an odd thing for people in my age group. I grew up in Orange County at a Orange Presbyterian church, and I became a believer when I was about 10. I made the personal choice to accept Jesus Christ, and was very active in my church. We had a great choir group and a wonderful youth group, and one of my first missions experiences was going down to Mexicali with Azusa Pacific University and serving the Mexican populations over spring break. And I did that with another friend who we ended up actually on the mission field together. So we started at Orange Presbyterian and both ended up in a friend's church. So that's kind of a funny way God works and brings us back around full circle to things. But trust me when I say that as a child, growing up in the church, missionaries didn't ever seem like very fun people. They were always guys wearing funny clothes, showing pictures of places I'd never been, and never in my life did I want to do that job. So, I think that's one of those great senses of humor of God, that, He takes me full circle again and brings me around to a job that I thought I would never, ever do. But I do have that innate sense of love of travel. Dave asked where I'd just been. I just returned from Haiti earlier in December. And Haiti is the 54th country I've traveled to in my life. I'm only 51, so I'm doing better than one a year at this point. And I just enjoy travel and meeting people in new cultures and seeing new places and being excited about God's creation. So that's just been one of the adventures that God has blessed me with throughout my life. So back to growing up, I grew up in Orange County. I went to Cal State Long Beach. I have a degree in public administration, which I always laugh and say uniquely qualifies me to be a missionary in nothing other than I can watch the local political scene, which is rather interesting when you live in a foreign country. But I actually failed out of college my first attempt at college, and it took me a total of 16 years to finally finish my bachelor's. I ran my own business. I was a entrepreneur. I had a silk screening business, I had a yard care business. I did many, many things when I was young. And in my early 30s, the big change point that came in my life was I was at a Bible study with a group of friends and a group of single gals. And one night, and I remember this so very vividly, we all sat down and prayed that God would make us the women that He desired us to be. And we were all single at that point, and hoping to meet the man of my dreams. I'm still 51. I haven't met him yet, so not that I can't, but that was the start of what I call a daily adventure with God. Because I said, I'm going to try and give up control and let you lead me to where you want me to go. So through a series of events, I had a thyroid storm. I ended up in the hospital. I ended up out of work for a little while. I reassessed my life. I got rid of things. I got myself out of debt. Just a number of things happened that set me up so that I was available when the opportunity to go and homeschool some missionary kids came up. And it was really one of those kind of Isaiah, here I am, send me experiences. I really felt the call through the verse in John 12:2-3, which says, here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took on a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And I was sitting in church one day, And that was the passage that was being discussed by the pastor. And what I really thought of that was there were three elements to that stool. Mary was serving. Lazarus was just enjoying God's company, and Mary was worshiping. And I had done really well at the enjoying God's company and worshiping, but I hadn't done really well at the serving. And so I felt him calling me to serve, and that service was, I agreed to do 9 months of homeschool education for some missionary kids. So, it's one of those things where when God gets a hold of you, I agreed to 9 months, and 13 years later, I moved back to the United States. So you always got to be careful what you're committing to. I went for 9 months. I loved it. 3 months in, I had a youth group going at the church. I didn't even speak the language. And it became so very apparent that this is where I belonged. So I often tell people that I am the missionary that God kind of laughs at the rules. I don't have a Bible education. I didn't have an undergraduate Bible education. I wasn't serving in a ministry role before I went to Cambodia. I wasn't doing any of the typical things that would send somebody to the mission field. But he kind of got me there in a roundabout way and used me once I got there. Because I actually really wanted to go to Africa and work in a missionary guest house. And when I went and talked to my pastor, Alan Amaviska at Yorba Linda Friends, he said, we got this opportunity to homeschool teach in Cambodia. And I kind of went, did you hear the Africa part? Did you hear the missionary guest house part? And I don't think I'm really a teacher. Well, God knew I was a teacher right in the inside. I just had never found that gifting. So here I was in Cambodia teaching 2 little boys who were in 3rd and 5th grade how to, add and multiply and you don't have to be too smart to stay ahead of a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. When they start getting a little bit bigger, it gets a little more challenging. But I started working with the youth in the church, and I knew that was where I belonged. There was no doubt in my mind. So how do you move forward when, that wasn't the plan of your life? And I came back to the United States and said, hey, I want to go be a missionary. And they said, so you don't have any of the prerequisites, but you're obviously gifted to go do this job. So I took some online Bible classes and correspondence work and did that and jumped right in with both feet. Khmer is an incredibly difficult language. It's 2 years of language study, which gets you to the point, somewhere around a year and a half, you get to the point where you can actually have a heartfelt conversation with someone. So for a year and a half, you're struggling just to have a conversation, which is, God, the weather's nice, and how many brothers and sisters do you have? And you're feeling like, why am I doing all this work? I'm getting nowhere fast. But here I am, that was in 2000, and here I am in starting 2017, and I call into Cambodia probably once a week on Skype, and I'm still using those language skills, and I'm still impacting people's lives in Cambodia, even though I live in Haviland, Kansas, which is the amazing part of technology today and the way missions has changed. So I was a homeschool teacher for 2 years, and then I did 8 years of youth leader development work. Cambodia, after the Khmer Rouge period, went through a population explosion. More than half of their population is under the age of 22 at this point. 70% is under the age of 35. So, it's just an incredibly heavy youth population. They are looking for hope. They're looking for change. So there were a lot of opportunities with young people that didn't necessarily exist with older folks. But in Asian cultures, it's so hierarchical that they don't allow young people to lead. So we created youth programs where they would lead in their own youth programs, and I trained them up on how to plan events, budget events, evaluate them, and do future planning and dreaming. So we just got this dynamic youth group going. So that was 2 years, and then 8 more years And after I had kind of walked 6 or 7 of them through this process, I got to a phase where God said, hey, it's either another group that you're going to start up with, or it's time to make some changes in what you're doing. And I made the jump and moved over into a ministry called Marketplace Ministries Worldwide, which is where I currently still serve. A lot of people don't realize I'm actually still a serving missionary, even though I live in the United States. And missions has been changing over the last 10 years at a tremendous rate. And mission work through the marketplace has become one of those areas that has become dynamic. So my last 3 years in Cambodia, I actually ran a pizza restaurant. I'd had some experience with a coffee shop before that up in Battambang where I lived. The pizza restaurant still exists today. There's a Cambodian national who runs it, and I do a lot of advising work with her. Those are a lot of my Skype calls back to Cambodia. And I'm running Origins, the Divine Coffee House, and it is a missions through business project. So our goal over at Origins is to engage and serve our community. So we serve them a good cup of coffee or whatever drink for anybody who's been around the Haviland area. I'm sure you've stopped in. But how do we engage our neighbors who don't know who Jesus is? How are we salt and light in the community? We try to give to things. We try to be present and available to talk to people. I have a prayer warrior team who are praying about the ministry that my staff would have open eyes to see, and that we could be engaging with people. Because most of what people need are people who listen. You know, we live in a tough world, and some days I think it's tougher in Haviland than it ever was in Cambodia. You know, some of the problems and the people that I see, and my heart breaks. So one of the things in my vision of the way missions works is I really believe that God sends missionaries out so that they can see and identify the problems, and they can pray for them, and they can bring that back to the body of believers who can lift those things up in prayer. Because prayer is the thing that changes things. You know, one of the challenges as a missionary is people put missionaries on pedestals. I don't do great things for God. I'm available, and God does great things, and he lets me participate. There's a big difference in the way that works. I get to be a part of it because I said I'm available and I'm willing. But we all get to do that in our lives because we're all missionaries to someone around us. And when we're available and say, God, you know what, do whatever, and I'm willing to be the one to stand here and be part of it, we get the honor and the privilege of joining God where he's at work. Because in Cambodia, our goal always was to see where God was working and try and join him in that effort. Because it's not my job, it's not any of our jobs to convert somebody to Christianity. It is our job to be available for the Holy Spirit to speak through us and to use us as his vessels. So these are important ideas in missions that sometimes we think we get a little confused about what we're supposed to be doing. One of the challenges in missions is recently they've done a study that says about 55% of a missionary's time is just spent living, because it's so much more complicated to live in some of these countries, to pay the bills, you know, to get somebody to work on your house or your car and deal with the government bureaucracies and the corruption that you're dealing with. They put out an annual corruption index, and Cambodia usually ranks around 15th or 16th from the bottom. So it's a highly corrupt country. And how do you run a business as a Christian person in a highly corrupt country? Well, you know what? I had the opportunity to do that, and it's challenging but I spoke the language, so I could talk to the people. And when I was in Haiti earlier in December, they said, but you don't understand. And I said, but I do understand. I've run a business in this kind of a country. And the one thing I know is that God is faithful. And if you sit down with a group of believers over any issue and pray together, you're probably going to make a better decision than one you would make by yourself. Because you get input from other people and you hear God, and other people are used by God to influence you in the way you make decisions. So all of that's really, really great, and that's kind of the practical parts. But why do we do missions? Let me back up. The biggest question I always get is, what do missionaries do? Because missionaries do a wide variety of things. And I didn't bring one tonight, but usually I have a krama, which is a piece of fabric that we use in Cambodia, and they use it for all kinds of reasons. They tie things on their motorcycle with it, or their scooter, or their bicycle. They wrap it around their head when there's too much dust to keep the dust off of them. They wipe sweat off. When they're bathing, they wrap it around them so that they can bathe in public. And I always say, missionaries like this krama, we do whatever is needed at the moment. That might be filling out paperwork for the government, or helping a kid with school, might be crying with somebody, and it might be helping somebody prepare a body for a funeral. I've done all of those things because it's a life you walk with people. But the main point of missions is, there's 3 reasons we really do missions. Because when we do missions work, God gets glory, which is always our goal, for God to get the glory. The second reason is the people get the message. Right? Because there are people out there who have never heard the message about Jesus Christ. But the last point, the reason we do missions, is we get blessed because we're obedient to God's call in our life. Now, for some of us, that means cross-cultural work, where we leave the United States and go live in a foreign country. But you know what? The way America has changed in the last 20 or 30 years, you can do cross-cultural work in Wichita. You don't have to leave the country. There's huge pockets of foreign nationals living in all major cities in the United States. There's also cross-cultural work where you deal with very poor people or somebody economically entirely different than you. And these are always different because we have to learn about them. We need to listen to them. We need to see them and figure out how it is we walk alongside them. I'm 51 years old, and I spend most of my days in Haviland talking to college students. Let me tell you, there's a huge learning curve there. They don't think anything like I think. We had lots of conversations going into this last election, and I didn't understand how they thought about that at all. But it's a great starting point for a conversation because I can ask the questions. I don't understand. Why do you think like that? Can you explain it to me? And it starts a dialogue. Because I know one thing for sure. When I went to Cambodia, I did not go to Cambodia to share a religion with people. I went to share about Jesus Christ, and I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And the only way I know you get to share a personal relationship with Jesus Christ is through a personal relationship with another person. It's a one person at a time relationship that you walk with somebody in life. And they say, why are you different? And you say, great question. I have the answer. I always call it the Jeopardy principle. I have the answer, and I'm waiting for you to ask me the question. And the answer is Jesus Christ every time. That's the old Sunday school joke, right? The teacher says, I have a question, and the kids raise their hand, and they say, Jesus. Almost always, because it's almost always the answer. And in regular life, guess what? It's the same thing. Jesus is the answer. I was reading last week as I was praying about what I was going to talk about tonight, and I ran across this passage in Ephesians. So it's Ephesians 3:7-10 in the NIV. And this is what it says. I became a servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given me through the working of his power. Although I'm less than the least of all the Lord's people, this grace was given to me, to preach to the Gentiles the boundless riches of Christ, and to make plain to everyone the administration of this mystery, for which the ages past was kept hidden in God who created all things. His intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms. So this is Paul, right? Because Paul is telling you that he was the least of all because he went and persecuted the church. But God gave him grace to go out and share. I think he's given us more than grace. He has given us grace, but he's also given us the call on our life that says, don't keep this a secret. It is not the hidden mystery. It is, Christ tells us, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and we need to go tell other people that he is the way, the truth, and the life. And I was just I get caught in passages of Scripture, and I have to just think about them and think, what is God telling me, and what is he challenging me to do with this kind of information? You know, I've read through my Bible, I don't know, a dozen times probably. So I've read this passage any number of times, but this time this stuck out. So what is God trying to say? And I really was focused on verse 7, where it said, I became a servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given to me through the working of his power. Because God is all powerful. And he chooses how and when to use it. And in this particular circumstance, he's telling Paul, Paul recognizes that God gave him this ability through God's power. And he truly had a power encounter, right? He's walking along, he's blinded, he's directed, all of those parts that are going along in Paul's story. So what does our story look like? What is our story in that walk with God and what he's calling us to do? It isn't always clear, and it isn't always neat and concise. It can be a very long, messy story. It can be difficult. But it's in the difficulties that you meet God, and God is faithful, and that's the days that you get to then stand on the mountaintop and scream at the top of your lungs that God is faithful, and I know it for sure deep down in my soul. I went to Cambodia and I met God in a way that I'm pretty sure I never would have in America. And he changed my life. And some days I sit in America and think, I don't know if I relate with people here because I've experienced something that they haven't experienced. And it's just different. And I think to myself, the challenge of being a missionary, having been a missionary and lived in a foreign country, is I'm loved in two places. I'm loved by people who live in Cambodia, and I'm loved by people who live in America. And if that's the worst thing that happens in my life, blessed is the only answer I come up with. I'm fully blessed because when I'm here, I miss people there. When I'm there, I miss people here. I don't miss the place, I miss the people. Because it's all about the people. Missions work is all about the people. It's the same work as the work of the church. It's all about the people. Why do we do it? Why do we do anything? Why do we get up every day and read our Bible? Or every other day, or however you approach that process in daily devotions with God? Because somehow God has changed you. And you're desiring that more. And you're desiring him more. But we only do that through the power of God as well. Because Paul tells us that I don't do what I want to do, and I do what I don't want to do. Right? Because that's the problem of people. We're sinful. Christ wasn't sinful. So, I hear often that missionaries are very special people. And I think the answer is, I used to say the answer is they're not, they're just normal people. And we still are. We're normal people. I get up and think, oh, I need to lose 5 pounds. Oh, I do normal things. But the process of going and struggling, I learned a lot. And if that's what makes me special, then I say, yeah, I am. Because I just put myself in a place where I had to rely on God. Because I can't tell you the number of times I was in a situation where my general instinct was wrong for the situation. And I just had to get down on my knees and say, God, you have to show me what to do because I have no idea what to do in this circumstance. It is beyond me. And when you allow yourself to be humbled like that, you change. So am I a unique person? Yeah, I was changed. I was changed by the experience, and I was changed by God. And I learned that God was faithful. And I have met some of the most wonderful people because people in other parts of the world are just like Americans. They want to get married and have a family, and they want their kids to have a better life than they did. And they want them to meet a wonderful spouse and have some grandkids, and they want to spend time with them. And they want to make enough money to live the life they desire to live. All of those are basic instincts in life, and they're all the same. They play out differently. In Cambodia, I drove a scooter all the time. I didn't drive a car. It rains 6 months of the year, and you drive a scooter, and if it rains, you pull under a gas station, and you wait out the rain, and then you go on to your next appointment. It's just different. I was blessed to be the short-term team coordinator for many years, and people would come, and I would say, here's the rule of thumb. It's not wrong, it's just different, because God makes us different. I look back at my missionary career, and I think if I taught them half of what they taught me, I probably was successful. Because I went to a country that is a kingdom. And in the United States, we like to use the book of John to show God's love to people. In Cambodia, we use the book of Matthew because they understand the kingly references because they have a king. Well, they helped me to have a new appreciation of the awe and reverence of what a king is to someone, to a peasant in that kind of culture. I had a very personal God that I shared with them, and they had a God they revered and truly were awed by. And when they say awesome, they mean awe in the way that I would never be in his presence because he's that amazing. So they helped me to see a new aspect of God that I didn't know. And I knew the day that one of the girls I was working with started her prayer and she called God Daddy, that she had found that personal relationship that is untypical for them. You know, there were days, and I think this is common in the mission world, there were many days where I thought, what am I doing here? Am I accomplishing anything, or am I just hitting my head against the wall? And then somebody would do something amazing, and you would think they got it. They got it, and it was worth it for that. We had a pastor in Battambang, and I lived in a city named Battambang, which is in the northwest part of Cambodia, very close to the Thai border. It was the region that was the most land mined during the Khmer Rouge period, so you did not go wandering around out in the countryside. You stayed on any path because there were landmines everywhere. And this particular pastor was a really good guy, but he would be up in front of church, and his cell phone would ring, and he would stop preaching, and he would talk on the phone. And you're thinking, come on, what are you ringing, turn off your phone and leave it at your. And so one particular Sunday, after church, it was like, why do you do that? Well, it might be important. Don't you think preaching in church on Sunday is important enough to put them off for a little while? We didn't have voicemail, so they couldn't just leave you a message. You would have to call them back later. And we said, you could call them back later. No, it's important. And so, we started a conversation with the church members. Do you think that's rude? Is disrespectful, to stop preaching? And there were varied opinions on it. And about 2 months later, he got up to go preach, and he handed Gary the phone, and he turned it off. And he said, I finally realized that it was not just, he said, it's probably disrespectful to the people, but it's disrespectful to God that I would take that phone call while I was preaching his word. And it was, one of those kind of red banner days where you think, he finally got it. He didn't get it the day we told him, but somewhere along the way, God revealed that to him. And he became a very large advocate to turn off your phone during church. The very next week, I'm sitting there going, whose phone is ringing and why are they not turning it off? And Christine looked at me and she goes, it's yours. So, the hilarity of life comes around and gets you back. I was one of the offenders as well. But when you work with people are disappointing. And they're encouraging and they're loving. And they ask for forgiveness when they do wrong things, and you have to ask for forgiveness. And it's all the things that we have to do with God. And I look at people, and I would look at the Cambodians, and I would look at God and think, you think of me the same way sometimes I think of them. They don't get it. And you're probably looking at me going, she doesn't get it. Is she ever going to get it? So I was taught many, many things throughout this period of missions work. One of my favorite days was I went to get a haircut, and I walked into the store, and it probably doesn't appear it because my hair is really short right now, but when my hair gets a little bit longer, and in Cambodia when it's humid, it gets quite curly. And I walked in and I said to the guy, just take off like a little bit, like this much. There's my fingers there. Like this much. Well, I came to learn after he started cutting that they use your thumb off the end of your little finger to mean a little bit. This to him meant cut it that short. So I walked out of the beauty shop with, a 1-inch haircut. And then he started shaving my face, and I said, wait, dude, stop. I don't know what you're up to. So I ended up with a shave and a haircut for $1.25. And let me tell you, some of you men, I don't understand how you deal with that, because the next, week with the kind of stubble on the pillowcase, I thought that was the worst experience ever. But I learned that when I thought I was being clear, we don't all communicate the same way. So what meant a little bit to me was a little bit to them. And it was that simple between a hand gesture. And if a hand gesture can make that big of a difference in, a haircut, how much difference does it make in a lifetime? So when we do what we think are overtly Christian symbols, in other cultures, they don't read them that way. They don't read friendship the same way we do. And it's a process of being humble enough to say, I don't understand. And so often it's the same thing with God, and saying, God, I don't understand. I need you to teach me. I went to the university for 2 years, and I would go home and I would practice my writing, and I was like a little kid with the little arrows, to show you how to write, because Khmer letters are not ABCs. And one day I was writing something, and they said, "You write like you're about in fifth grade, or about 5 years old." And I said, "Well, since I've only been doing it 2 years, maybe that's good. I don't know, I mean, a 5-year-old here is doing okay. They write really big, because they're not used to it." And they just laughed and said, "Yeah, keep trying, keep going. You're doing okay." And I would say words, and they'd look at me and not understand. And there were so many opportunities to apply what I was doing with my own personal relationship with God, and thinking, every time I struggle with this, God's kind of struggling with me the same way. So why do we do these things? Why doesn't God just step in and meet them himself? Why does he use this broken vessel, this vessel that needs a lot of help, to do his work? Why does he want me involved? And it was a lot of wonder and a lot of conversations. And I ultimately realized, because that's how he desires to have a relationship with me. And it's me, the relationship he has with me, that I share. Because that's all I have to share. When all of it comes down to the bottom, all I can tell people is my own personal experience with God. That's what I have to share. So, being a missionary, I was sick a lot. I struggled with my health the entire time I was on the mission field. If any of you have ever read the Testament, I had dengue fever twice. There is no cure for dengue fever. You just persist through it, and you're sick for about a month. I caught hepatitis B. I was bit by a dog. Health was a major problem for me. But it was in my poor health that the Cambodians were able to serve me. And it truly became a relationship, not a one-sided me only helping them. And God said, you can't be always the giver. You have to be the receiver sometimes too. And many of us don't like to receive things. We like to be the giver. But we need to receive things from God. And we need to receive things from those that are around us who have things to say and things to give. So in those illnesses, ultimately hepatitis took me off the field and brought me back to the States, because my doctor said, you can't live here anymore. It's too stressful and it's too hard on your body. And so for the last 5 years, I have been in a recovery mode from that disease. And hepatitis B, you never get rid of it. You live with it the rest of your life. It's been a hard 5 years. I came back for 1 year of rest and recovery. And
it's 18 hours.
Sorry, that's my computer. And I had a conversation with Jim Lashana, and the opportunity to move to Haviland came up. And it was the first exciting thing I'd heard in a while. And I looked at my parents and I said, I think I'm moving to Kansas. And they said, Kansas? Well, let me tell you, I like Kansas. My Southern California friends, they don't get it. I like the fact that in Kansas you sit down and talk to people. And you have relationships with your neighbors. In California, most people don't know their neighbors. So I went out to Kansas to start Origins, and Origins has been a fun project. It's an entirely different type of project than what I was doing in Cambodia, which was one-to-one leadership development kind of work. Now I'm working with college students and trying to have them see a bigger picture. How do we use a business to affect people and show people that we're Christians? So as we move forward with this project, because we're coming around to February, which Origins will be 2 years old, We are now seeking money, and we have located a building, and we are looking to expand into Wichita, right across from Friends University. So I have another project that I get to work on, and I get to interact with an entirely different group of people. And what does ministry look like through a business in Wichita? Since I've been in California, I have now a new defined role with my ministry organization, Marketplace Ministries, and I'm now going to be the International Business Development Manager, and I will be traveling internationally to re-engage with folks in Cambodia, and we have a poultry farm in Mozambique, and we're looking at a project in Uganda. And I am in the best health I've been in my life. I am actually, today, I'm in the best place I've been in probably the last 10 years. Physically, I've lost 40 pounds. Health-wise, I'm doing well. I have finished my master's. I'm enjoying learning everything that Dave Kingray can tell me. I'm sure you guys all feel the same way. Just soak in anything Dave Kingray has to tell me. I'm applying to get my doctorate in faith, work, and economics out of Asbury. And the plan just seems to keep unfolding that God's changing my mission field yet again. He's just going to do it from a base in Haviland, Kansas, which would have never been my plan because I didn't even know where Haviland, Kansas was on a map. But it's a great place and a chance to hang out with college students and do these things and show them that there's opportunities out there that they never thought existed. And when I prayed that prayer when I was 30 years old was the day I started on a journey with God that has blown my mind, because I could never imagine the places I've been, the people I've met, the things I've been able to do and accomplish. So, that's my story. That's a long version of my story with a bunch of points in the middle. And I am yet one missionary, and I do it one way. And all the other missionaries out there do it an entirely different way. But the one coalescing factor is we all do it with people one by one by one. And it's the people in front of us, wherever we are. You know, Brad and Chelsea we're just praying for their health as they're getting ready to go back to Rwanda so that they can affect the people in their sphere of influence. So, what does that mean for everybody else? It means that you get to be a missionary right where you are, because your neighbors, the grocery store clerk. You know, one of the greatest stories of my life was when I was a child. And I went to the grocery store one day with my mom, and my mom went to the same grocery store always. And we walked in, and my uncle was standing there, and he was buying groceries because they lived very close to us. And my mom started talking to him. And the grocery store clerk said, "You're my favorite two customers." And my mom said, "That's my brother." And she just chuckled. And I thought, I come from a long line of talkers who can talk to anybody. But the two of them constantly shared with this checker about their faith in their life, because it was part of them and part of their everyday existence. And it couldn't but not come out in those conversations. Do you have a question, Dave?
I'm thinking this might be a good time to take a 10-minute break. We always take a break about halfway through.
Okay.
And this would also give us opportunity to formulate questions in our minds that we might want to ask you, or the other way around, some others might want to share their story of mission work where they have been or are.
Fantastic.
And I do need to say that whatever little bit you learned from me, I have learned far more from you. I told you that way when you started, and it's true. I tell the truth, and that is the truth. I'm a Quaker. So we thank you for what you've shared with us so far. Why don't we take a 10-minute break, and we'll just see you back here in a little bit.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Dave,
Yes.
this is Jerry, and if you anybody wants to listen, why Mary and Margie are going to be playing a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll just leave the recorder on then, and we'll get that for everybody else that'll listen to it on YouTube. So,
Okay.
Mary and so who is going to be playing now?
Mary Louthan and Marjorie Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Marjorie will be playing the organ, and Mary will be playing the piano.
Oh, good. Well, we'll look forward to that. So, go ahead. Let it roll.
All right. I think try. Did you need to say something, David? Dave, did you need to say something? This is Jerry.
What did you ask, Jerry?
Did you need to say something?
No.
Okay, well, I'll
Thank you. We're enjoying this.
Okay, here comes the next one.
All right.
First.
So this is dinner.
Or Jesus is all
They're looking to see if you're coming.
Yeah, we better get started again.
Or they'll start another.
Maybe this would be a good time to all of us convene again. You think so? We thank you, Mary and Marjorie, for sharing your talent with us. And those hymns always are an inspiration to us when you play. And we thank you for that. Wow. What a gift. Is that a grand piano you're playing there?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Mary's playing the grand piano, and Margie's playing a, what is that kind of organ?
Oh, can't
Is it a?
it's different.
Okay, well, anyways, it's pretty nice organ. It used to be in the Friends Church there at Friendswood, and they got a new one, so we inherited this one.
Oh, how nice. Well, we thank you. It was an inspiration to us. I'm wondering if we can reconvene. So, Michelle, did you get the text from Martha Hodson that she's here in the room? I was so much involved in what you were doing that I didn't even look around to see who all was here.
Yes, she said she snuck in and you didn't notice.
She did. That's called holy sneakiness. Well, I think this would be a good time to ask anyone to ask Michelle a question, and I would like for you to feel free to, or to share any personal experience that you've had that might be similar or that might be different in terms of your ministry. And I think we can use those terms interchangeably because mission work is ministry. Well, I have to say that these three reasons for doing missions, that God gets the glory, the people get the message, and we get the blessing because we are obedient. That says it all right there. So tell me, others of you, how do you respond to this? What questions and thoughts do you have in response? I want to start with a question while others of you think about it then. Michelle, I want to know what it was like to have the boldness to go into a brothel and to bring out someone who was being held there. I mean, what's that like? I have no idea what that's like and what courage it would take to do that. Do you feel comfortable sharing that?
Well, you make it sound it's a little different than the way you make it sound. I was involved with a girl who was being held at a hotel that was basically on her way to a brothel. So she was being held against her will. And I don't know how to explain it. I'm a fairly bold person in a general context, but those are the kind of things where you just get holy anger and you have to act on it because it's just wrong. And you don't really, I'm a rational person who thinks through most issues, but this is kind of the situation where you just go and you do what you need to do. Putting aside your own personal safety for the safety of a young girl who can't do that for herself. So I don't know that I can actually explain what it's like, because it's one of those things that I knew just needs to be done, and I did it. Does that make sense, Dave?
Yes. Was your life endangered when you did that because someone else might harm you for doing that?
I was probably less at risk than a Cambodian national would have been, because the other people involved would be Cambodian nationals, and to harm a foreigner, at least at that period, would have given them a greater punishment. So being a foreigner allowed me to do things that the Cambodians couldn't do themselves. At that point. At this point, I doubt that holds true. So was there harm in the factory? Yeah, sure. There's guns. There's large men involved. But at the same time, I think sometimes when you just do things that are unexpected, they're not sure how to react. And also when God's directing you, I think you just have to do what's being called to do.
Question here, Dave. Yeah, got a question here. Bruce. Yeah, this is Bruce. Michelle, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you anticipate about business and mission working together. I know there's been some of that in several mission fields or in several areas, but I'm hearing that it's going to be more and more common. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit of what you expect to happen, and how should we look at that? How should we prepare for that?
Well, yes, it is. It is definitely the trend, I guess would be what you would say. How it kind of works is this: when we look at missions, and we go to a foreign country, poor people are typically the early adopters because they live kind of a hopeless life already, and so Jesus offers hope, and they jump in. Unfortunately, poor people don't tend to influence other people, right? Because they don't have a sphere of influence. Working in a business, I had to interact with bankers, with government employees, with other business owners, and as I would share and constantly got the question, why are you here and what are you doing? So I always had the door was always open to answer those questions. And as I would share with people in this kind of middle income group, as people in this group start to become Christians, well, obviously they influence their peers as well as others down, along with the fact that they bring skills to the church because they're already running businesses. They're working in jobs that have, are skilled jobs. So they have leadership skills, they have possibly accounting skills or, opportunities to serve the church and move the church along that clearly poor people have not had. Otherwise, they would have better jobs than they currently, than their current situation. So this kind of meeting people where they live and then encouraging them to come into the church, well, they bring all of these skills and all of these relationships with them as they would make these kind of moves. So I was able to touch people's lives that as a traditional missionary, I didn't have the access to those same types of people. So that is definitely one area where that is a unique door into, just access of regular connection with and in relationship with. The one thing I don't think I did share is I have just actually accepted a position at Berkeley where I'm going to be doing research and development of a curriculum program because we hope to, within the next 2 years, start a missions through business major at Berkeley as we're looking forward. And that would be in partnership with the ministry that I'm working with, Marketplace Ministries, who is doing this type of work. And so the Marketplace Ministries will have internships for these students, and it's kind of marrying this relationship together, which is one of the reasons we want to expand into Wichita. So it'll give us some more internships locally. So there's this kind of this big picture that's going on, and I'm kind of right in the middle of all of it at this moment. Does that answer your question, Bruce? Okay. Anybody else have a question? I mean, I'm excited. I just see so many opportunities there, and this kind of age group that's in college, they're excited about this kind of holistic life, ministry through a business, through, just all of their life is one big ministry idea. So I'm excited for what the future has to hold in that area.
Jerry, I'm wondering if there's anyone down there in your area in that South Texas. Can you identify with what she said? Does this resonate with you friends there at Lighthouse? I mean, your church itself is a mission church. What are you thinking, Jerry, or anyone there where you are? Floyd?
Well, I think it's very definite that when you're in a small congregation that is kind of a plant church, although it's not a church that started from nothing, because Lighthouse Fellowship Friends started with the League City Friends background. And so we are an older congregation with people who are just now coming into a new opportunity, and so we're feeling our way along. And I would say that probably Drew over at Angleton could maybe speak to this a little bit more than myself, because they have been on the cutting edge of new types of outreach, and even like coffee house type ministry and so forth. If Drew would care to share.
Jerry,
Go ahead.
you're kind to call us on the cutting edge. Sometimes we're just kind of bouncing around from one crazy idea to the next, it feels like, but thanks. I love the concept of, missions to business. And yes, we, several years ago, our church did purchase a building and fix it up as a coffee house in a town about 15 minutes down the road, where the only 3 churches in town had all shut down over the past couple of years before that. And so we didn't really know anyone in the community, and didn't know, we didn't feel like we could start a church there, but we felt like we could do events out of just a small old laundromat, basically, that we kind of just made real nice on the inside and just gave out some free coffee and did some Christmas music and Christmas time and gave out meals around Thanksgiving time, but never operated it for profit. Now, in the years since we opened that and reached out to the community through that, some people that came to the coffee house helped revitalize and get some of the churches rebooted and that sort of thing. And there's 2 or 3 now churches working again, and we support them at their VBSs, and they can come use the coffee house for community events and things like that. If that, just to give you some kind of an idea of it, I don't really know if that's what you're looking for, but there's a little something about what we're doing. I mean, the industry down here in Texas is booming just because of growth, and there would be a lot of opportunity for a coffee house for business if we had someone around that was inclined to run that. But right now the building's just used for like AA meetings and free outreach events and things like that.
I think that's a very innovative idea, that your coffee house became the stimulus or the catalyst for growth in the churches and the revitalization of the churches.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, you're welcome.
Yeah. Kathy, you're a mission-minded person. What do you think of all this?
Frankly, I found it fascinating. Michelle makes things very simple, very understandable. I like how she has tied the fact that we're all missionaries to somebody, and we are. In our little church, we have a young woman that reached out to us. It was a sad story in a way. She was had been in prison for drug-related charges, and she had become a Christian, or has become a Christian, but she reached out to every church, or almost every church in the Gardner area. And our little church, and we are little, we're the only ones that responded. And while it's not in the magnitude of what Michelle has done or what has just been shared, we've reached out to her to meet her needs, to find out what her needs were. We embraced her. We're learning about her and the challenges that she faces with restitution and what she's lost in her life. We're gaining an understanding of what people face when they want to turn their lives around, but they hit obstacles from the very system that's there to help. So the fact of reaching out, even one individual at a time, made an impact, because I'm seeing that happen in our own little church. So I found it a blessing. I also, if it's not too late,
Yeah.
and if she's so inclined, I would really be interested in hearing a little more about the human traffic issues here in our own country and how to reach out.
Mike, here it is.
Before we do that, thank you for sharing, Kathy. But I had asked Martha Hodgson, who has served as a missionary, if she would respond, and so she's ready to do that. And then afterward, let's let Michelle answer your question. How's that sound? Is that okay? Yeah, Martha.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, Martha, thank you for being here.
Sure, thanks. I actually know Michelle. We did the master's program together, so that's kind of why I came tonight. I just wanted to follow up on, Kathy, what you said. I served in Ireland for 3 years with the underprivileged, which Michelle was talking about, traditional missions, going to the needy, things like that. We had, moderate success at, converting people. We were working with people who had been hearing about Jesus for a long time. And every once in a while, they got to this point where it actually meant something to them, and it was really special, and they're going places, and their faith is growing, and you're so excited. We had several families in the community that I worked with, but no one on the team that I worked with really felt like we wanted to do a church plant specifically with their families, because they couldn't budget for themselves for a month. They couldn't teach themselves. They couldn't organize themselves, things like that. So it would be very much our team leadership, which was supposed to be doing other outreach things, ministering to youth, getting to know new families, things like that. We would be drawn into just church planting, and that wasn't our calling. So we kept trying to find churches where those people were comfortable, where they were accepted, where they felt like they belonged, where the teaching wasn't too high for them and the people weren't too fancy or too rich or too biased against them. And so when I left, we actually had a lot of success with that. I went back a year later, and one of my friends had found a church she loved, and while I was there, it came out that somebody at the church was, not blackmailing her, but speaking ill of her because she came from a background where she was addicted to drugs and had some stuff like that, and she was processing through it. But this person didn't see how God could be involved in someone that filthy and that dirty in their life. And I just want to say, I'm so thrilled to hear about a church that is taking on even just one person like that, because one person at a time can change an entire community. If we had been able to find a church where Jeanette and her husband had felt really comfortable and were accepted, and it was accessible to them because she had some mobility issues, I think the ministry that I left would have carried on a lot longer than it did. But I also, in saying that, have to remind myself that God is bigger. And a church can just be two people. So where I'm looking at couples, that's the church. That's God's there with them and their children. And so, yeah, it's like Michelle said, missions changes your perspective on a lot of things. I have been challenged by discussing missions with her and hearing about her experiences with business people and working in a whole different facet of culture than I did. She went to culture where she had to learn language and deal with corruption and all of these things. And I went to Ireland, which is every tourist's dream because it's green and beautiful. And I had little kids swearing at me. That was my biggest problem, that they had a bad temper and filthy mouths. So it's just fun. And really what God has been speaking to me most about missions is that when you break out into different cultures, when you get to know Christianity in a different way and how it looks to different people, you see glimpses of what God himself is like. And when you can put all of those together, you get that picture in heaven of all of the people groups of the world, all of the peoples and countries and ethnicities worshiping God together. That's the fullness of the church, and missions helps you build that little by little here on earth. And definitely we can do that here in the States now. I'm from a part of Kansas where we have refugees coming in from all over the world. So small town in Kansas, currently have one, but before that it was still fairly small. And God's doing really big things in missions and redefining how we think about it. So definitely, I want to back up that missions happens here in the States, not just overseas. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Martha. And from your experiences of having been a missionary in Ireland, and it seems to be God's will that you may be returning there someday. So we're all praying about that. Now, Michelle, do you want to respond to Kathy's question? Do you need to rephrase your question?
Nope, I know. I got it.
Okay, good.
Human
Go
trafficking.
ahead.
Okay, human trafficking in America is, I wouldn't say it's that different than other places. Sacramento is one of the major hubs of human trafficking in the United States because a lot of it comes in from Asia and South America, and they use the port up there as a large gateway. And it comes straight across the United States, straight through the middle of right where we are. Highway 400 is a major corridor for transit in this country, and a lot of that moves on these trucks that we see every day. That, when I go from Haviland to Pratt and I see these trucks, any number of those, it could be holding people that are being trafficked. It's constant, and it's scary, and it's one of those things that we miss because we don't stop long enough to look. And you're probably going, what does that mean? So a friend of mine told me this story. She had a lady up in Sacramento, and she would shop at this thrift store. And right next door to this thrift store was a nail shop. And she would go in and out of this thrift store, and one day she kind of thought to herself, none of the workers in this nail shop ever come out of that shop. Like at lunchtime, they don't go out and get something to eat. I never see them come out the front door. And she thought, well, maybe they just go out the back door. But she thought something was wrong. Something in her head said there's something not right there. So she decided one day to sit in her car and watch this shop. So she watched it for a couple hours and realized that these girls never left the building. They weren't going out the back door. They weren't going out the front door. They never left the building. And she thought, there's something just not right here. So she came back another day and watched it again, and then she called, some kind of service in the local area, and said, I think there's just something wrong going on in this shop, because there are girls that work there. They're all Asians. None of them speak English well, but that's not that odd, but, none of them speak English well, but they never leave this building. They don't go outside and get a cigarette. They don't, go down to the 7-Eleven and get a Coke or, nothing. And that just doesn't seem right. So the local authorities got together, started paying attention. They ended up breaking up a trafficking ring, a major trafficking ring, where they were able to rescue like 50 people, because they found where they were moving them. They were bringing them in the morning and then taking them back to another location. And when they went in and raided this other location, there were like 50 girls covering like 5 nail shops, that were being farmed out every day. And all that happened there was somebody noticed something wasn't right. And she spent the time and effort to follow up that niggling feeling in her that said there's something wrong here. And I think we often walk by things that we kind of think, something's weird about that, but I don't know what it is. And I would just encourage people to take that extra moment, at least pray about it. That, like, God, I don't know what's going on there, if you feel that urge to do something more, try and figure out what the more is. because, you know, there's an old saying that all that it takes for evil to succeed is for a good man to do nothing. And, you know, as people, when we know that this is happening around us, we need to lift up our eyes and start looking around. And part of that is asking God to show us what's around us, and how do we help people? Because all people have dignity, and when we treat people with dignity, they respond. And so that would be my biggest comment about, you know, human trafficking is a huge problem. I mean, we talk about slavery being abolished way back when, and you know, as Quakers, we were majorly involved in that, but we don't seem to have a big voice in trying to deal with the current slavery issues, and not just sexual slavery, but, you know, people that are being brought up from Central and South America that are serving as slaves in people's homes in America, because that is going on. People don't like to think about it or discuss it, but it's happening. There are indentured servants in America being locked in basements at night and working in the days in homes in America. And it's tragic. It's tragic. So.
It's a sobering word. The truth hurts this time.
It does, Dave. It does. I would wonder if Michelle, I know there are organizations that do try to reach out in our nation. I was wondering if she had any information on those that perhaps maybe she could put up on a website or send out when we have this message recorded.
Oh, I definitely could. I can forward them to Dave, and he could attach them as notes, or I don't know how he does that. I was fortunate when I was in Cambodia that I worked with an organization. It was called Chabdai, which means to grasp hands, and they were doing something rather unique because they formed a coalition of all the organizations that were working in trafficked people or people at risk, and shared communication instead of kind of worked independently, and were much more, they had greater success, shared information when they tried to work together. You know, there's lots of good organizations, but you can only do so much when you're a small organization. Because the other side of the coin is offering jobs to people that we would identify as at risk. And when I was running the coffee shop, one of our goals is to offer jobs to people, to young girls specifically, that are at risk. And at risk means they're struggling, and they've got to bring in money to the family, so they need a job. And if they don't end up with a regular job, they end up with a crappy job, you know, in a sex situation or in a brothel or something. So when they're identified at risk, we're trying to figure out how do we create something that would allow them to earn an income and get them out of being at risk for that type of step over into that kind of life.
You know, I'm not sure how you would do this in a public way. There has to be, I don't know how you put information like that out, but it's something worth, I think, thinking about. And it may be that Michelle, you and I and Martha and some others can put our heads together back here at Berkeley College. I know we've got some students. We had one student that prepared a really powerful PowerPoint, educational PowerPoint. Her name is Bethany Magnuson, and I know she talked with you and got a great deal of information from you, Michelle. But she educated our whole class on that. Signs to look for, just like you were telling us signs. So there's education that can be done And I guess one place you could begin would be through the yearly meeting. It might be that some way David Williams could be involved in this too. Let's give some more thought to that, Michelle. But certainly, the Quakers have a history of anti-slavery activity, but it has immensely weakened in our day, as you say. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on this or anything else related to what Michelle has said. You've been pretty quiet there, Fowler. I don't know, Michael, or I don't know if anyone there, Fowler, has thoughts to share on this, or what about?
Sure, I have a thought. If you want.
Well, yeah, who's talking? Michael Miller.
This is Michael Miller, yeah. And my question for Michelle is if you could just kind of revisit when you were a kid going to Orange Presbyterian and then going down to Mexicali, and what impact that little short-term mission trip had on your life, and if, what impact do you think that such a trip in our context might have for our youth and our kids?
I did that for three years for spring break, and the way that program worked was each church had a church or a town, kind of an area of town, so they kind of spread the whole region there, and we were responsible basically for kind of a VBS program. And I was taking Spanish in high school, so I did an entire lesson in Spanish. So I worked with my high school Spanish teacher. I wrote my lesson out, and he helped me translate it, and I practiced it, and it was great. I mean, it was great to see the response. We learned songs in Spanish, and we really tried to go and be as bilingual as we could be. Now, being from Southern California, Spanish has always been a language that's spoken. I mean, now I think it might be more spoken than English here, but and the chance to do that where there were very few adults involved. We were actually the leaders. We were doing the teaching, we were doing the leading. We did a lot of prep work the year, and I walked away with I could do it. Like the important part. I could do it, and I could impact people. I spent the time, and obviously I didn't think about it at the time, but I obviously shared my faith with my Spanish teacher, who I later came to know was already a believer. But it took guts to go to him and say, "I want you to help me translate this Christian message in Spanish." I mean, today in high school, who knows? They'd probably throw you out if you wanted to do that. I don't know what they'd do. But for me, it was the value the church said, even though you're in high school, you can do this. It's not the job of professionals, only adults. It's everybody's chance. Now, they're still going to Mexicali, which seems a little crazy to me because that's 33, 34 years ago. And you're like, really? Have we not made any significant progress down there in this program? Or is it just the shot in the arm that year they kind of come down and, and do it?
Well, Mexicali is about 800,000 to 1 million people now. So there's a lot more people now.
So that's probably true. So yeah. But it is kind of funny that was my first experience, and then this gal named Renee, who when I went to Cambodia, she went the same year I did, her and her husband, and we had gone to Mexicali together. So, I mean, it's just interesting how God moves that, and we both ended up at Friends churches as Friends missionaries.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Michael, what's your experience been in short-term missions? You obviously have some experience in order to ask that question.
Well, I didn't take my first missions trip until I was in my late 20s, and just short-term missions trips. I've been to Haiti twice. I've been to Brazil. I've done some ministry in Canada, Mexico several times. I've done some ministry in Kenya as well.
So my question to you is, I coordinated short-term dreams when I was in Cambodia. What were the most significant things you did when you went to another place that impacted you?
Well, I was, in all the different contexts, there were different ministry kind of things going on. And so for me, the more involved I was, the better trip it was. And so when I was in Brazil, I was part of a ministry team where we were doing services during the daytime, and then also at night, and our night services would conclude after ministry prayer, midnight, 1 o'clock, something like that. And it was just a lot of ministry, a lot of opportunity to minister to people. But I've also been on a trip, my second trip to Haiti. I just felt like so much of the time was just wasted because we really weren't doing a lot. We wanted to go there and try to do some micro-funding and stuff, and that didn't take very long, and we were there for, about 2 weeks, and there wasn't a lot of church ministry lined up for us at that time. So I think the more involved we are, the more opportunity we would have to pray with people, and oftentimes if it was a bigger trip, then we would get opportunities to go and preach in smaller churches, and that was a lot of fun. The smaller churches, not smaller churches in our context, in their context. There would be a mega church in Southwest Kansas, but in Brazil it's a smaller church. So yeah, I would just say involvement, ministerial involvement.
Well, I would say, from my perspective, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that make successful short-term missions trips. One, I think there's a direct correlation between the amount of preparation time and the amount of time you spend there.
Okay.
Because there's team building elements, prayer together, and that kind of focused direction of the preparation time. My internet seems to be freaking out on my side. Because you run into hard things in these countries. And when you spend time as a team, the team respond to each other and walk with each other through some of these difficult things. Can you guys hear?
This Randy Littlefield in Wichita.
Yeah.
I was curious about your role in the capacity. Was it, Michelle, coordinating from the Cambodia side, or were you coordinating, like, for example, Adam Monahan coordinates short-term missions out of Wichita from the Wichita side?
I did the Cambodia side.
That's what I think.
But we made decisions on the field, like we never took more than 7 people.
Yeah.
Because there were transportation issues and overwhelming issues to the church bodies there.
Yeah.
But we ran a team, and I would highly recommend this one. Scott Sward, who's currently in Cambodia, came up with this idea, and it's the Luke 10 team. And the goal was you came with a backpack, a journal, and a sense of adventure. And what I tried to do was I put them in places where there were no missionaries and they just had to deal with Cambodians in ministry context. Now, they were always scared when I would walk away or drive away, but every time we debriefed, the best part of their trip was when we were not present with them. because they had to figure out how to communicate, and they got to know locals, nationals. They didn't communicate through me, me translate, them, me translate, back and forth. And so they don't have a relationship because they had to deal with each other. So I sent them out to the far reaches of Cambodia a couple times. And for me, it was a wonderful opportunity because I got to teach leadership to my Cambodian nationals because they led these groups. They had to budget for them, they had to plan food, they had to find a place for them to stay, they had to do all that part. So I got two sides of that one. So not only were the folks coming from America getting a real natural experience of what we had to go through, but I was able to use it as a learning experience for my Cambodian nationals at the same time. So it was like a 2-for-winning kind of short-term team. There's a win-win in the result side because everybody got to learn. But we set them up to have a lot of prep time as the team because when they would hit tough stuff, when they're out and, one time they were up right on the Thai border, like a half a mile from the Thai border, and they're walking down this street with the Cambodians, and they want to go over to, I don't know, somewhere further, and the Cambodians are telling them to stop. And they're looking at them, and they said, but why? And the Cambodians have English, but not, it's rough. And all of a sudden, they didn't have any idea how to say it, and they looked at them, and they said, boom. And that meant landmines over there. Don't go over there, because, you need to stop. And you managed to figure out how to communicate. And some of those relationships still exist. I know of two people that still communicate on Facebook with a couple of the Cambodians directly because they spent time with them. And guess what? They pray more for them. They're more engaged in the field in Cambodia because of those kinds of experiences. But it requires a lot of preparation on the U.S. side to be ready to go have that kind of experience because it can be hard. And you can see hard things.
Well, what a rich evening this has been. We've reached the hour where we was break, but we could go on and on sharing experiences, sharing our own experiences, hearing more of what you have to share. But one thing for sure, in your obedience and your blessing, you have blessed us as you've given the people the message and thereby given God the glory. The three fit together. And I couldn't be more thankful, and the rest of us, for sharing openly your personal story as a missionary and your mission work in Cambodia and the U.S., and what your plans are for the future. This is exciting. And it's a lot of what you said tonight about what you'll be doing here is new to me, but I want to be a part of that vision. So we thank you for your ministry here at Barclay College, too, for challenging us to hear and take seriously the Great Commission of Christ, to go into all the world. And the world may be in Fowler, Kansas, or Liberal, Kansas, or Wichita, or even Haviland, or Ireland, or Cambodia. The world is God's, and we have a mission, and I thank you for sharing that. So let me tell you that our next meeting will be 1 month from tonight, February 6th. We will start our 5th phase of the Institute curriculum, and the first 3 sessions will be on worship leadership. Derek Brown, who just completed his PhD in Quaker Studies, no less, and has studied the development of the pastoral system in the U.S. Derek, he taught our Quaker Classics course. He teaches in the pastoral ministries here, and he teaches in the worship at the master's level. And so I know we're going to find him stimulating. So if you have received a certificate at tonight, let this just be an encouragement for you to get one 3 years from now and catch everything else in the meantime, because I know several of you have been with me the whole 12 years that I've been here, and Drew, you were here 3 years before that. So, and every session is new and enriching. And you've certainly made it that way tonight, Michelle, and we thank you. So let's close with prayer. Our loving God, we thank you for Michelle Murray and for her ministries around the world. We thank you for our rich fellowship and our learning this evening. We feel your call more strongly to proclaim your good news, the Great Commission, the gospel of Christ, who was born in a manger, lived on this earth, died on the cross, was resurrected, and lives among us and within us, and directs the affairs of the church around the world in order to accomplish your perfect will. Help us to be all you would have us be, and we will give you the glory. Thank you, O Lord. Amen. So, friends, what a great evening we've had. Thank you again, Michelle. And we will look forward to being with all of you a month from tonight. And Michelle, I hope it's not a month till you get back here. Do you know when you'll return?
I'll be back Wednesday night, Dave.
Oh, good. Well, we'll get to see you this weekend. Great. Good night, friends. We love you all.
Thanks for inviting me, Dave.
Yes, indeed.